The thing that always strikes me is that it's when other people come and tell you what they have either seen or heard or interacted with.
When the latest batch of Epstein-related court documents hit the public, few expected anything truly new. Most assumed the files would be the same as always. Familiar names, endless legal jargon, thick redactions, and fragments of conversations that raised more questions than answers. That's been the pattern for years: dense paperwork, old connections, very little clarity. But tucked deep inside this release was one short email that felt different. Not because it shouted scandal, not because it referenced a crime. It was the casual tone, the sender, the recipient, and the way just a few lines reopened old wounds, confirmed long-held suspicions, and forced uncomfortable questions about judgment, entitlement, and power. The email appears to show Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, then the Duke of York, asking Ghislaine Maxwell if she had found him some new inappropriate friends. The words alone sent shockwaves, but the true weight comes from the context, the timing, their relationship, and what was already known behind closed doors when the message was sent. Dated August 2001, the email came from an account labeled The Invisible Man and was signed simply with the letter A. It was sent to Ghislaine Maxwell, who would later be convicted for helping Jeffrey Epstein run his abuse network. At that moment, Epstein's reputation was already cracking in private circles, even if the full public reckoning was still years away. The opening line of the message immediately narrows the field of who could have written it. I am up here at Balmoral summer camp for the royal family. That phrase is not something just anyone could write. Balmoral is the monarch's private estate in Scotland. August at Balmoral is traditionally reserved for the inner circle of the royal family. It is a place of privilege, routine, and long-standing tradition. The sender clearly felt at home there, comfortable enough to describe it casually, almost jokingly, as a summer camp. The message goes on to describe days filled with organized activities. Everyone is tired by evening. There is a line about watching over the girls and needing to send them to bed early because separating them was becoming exhausting. The language is relaxed, informal, and oddly intimate. It reads like someone talking to a trusted friend, not someone worried about how their words might one day be read by strangers. Then the tone changes. After asking how Maxwell is doing and mentioning Los Angeles, the sender writes the line that has now become infamous. Have you found me some new inappropriate friends? There is no explanation, no sign of irony, no effort to soften the phrase. It is written as if both people already understand exactly what is being discussed. The sender then adds that he is free from August 25th until September 2nd and wants to go somewhere hot and sunny with fun people before returning to work in the autumn. He asks for ideas. The message ends warmly, casually, like any friendly exchange. Maxwell replies a few hours later. Her response is sarcastic. She apologizes for disappointing him and says she has only managed to find appropriate friends. She jokes about church meetings. To some, this exchange might look like dark humor between two people who believed they were untouchable. But when viewed in full context, it becomes much harder to dismiss. Why does this one email matter so much? Because of when it was written. The message was sent just months after the period during which Virginia Giuffre alleges she was abused. Those allegations later became central to Andrew's public downfall and the civil lawsuit that ended in a financial settlement years later. Andrew has always denied wrongdoing. He has said he does not recall meeting Giuffre and has consistently rejected her account. He has also claimed that he cut ties with Epstein once concerns were raised, but this email places him in direct contact with Maxwell at a time when concerns were already circulating privately. Even if Epstein had not yet been arrested, warnings were already being shared in elite circles. The idea that this was an innocent or accidental connection becomes harder to accept when the language is so familiar and so relaxed. 2 days after the first email, the Invisible Man sends another message. This one is more personal. He writes that he has lost his valet. a man who had been with him since he was 2 years old and had died in his sleep. He describes feeling unsteady, overwhelmed, and adrift. He shares his emotions openly, as if confiding in someone he trusts deeply. Then he adds another crucial detail. He says he has left the RN. Those 2 letters refer to the Royal Navy. Andrew officially stepped down from active naval service at the end of July 2001. The timing matches perfectly. This detail, combined with the Balmoral reference, the family setting, and the later travel plans, has led journalists and legal experts to conclude that the sender was almost certainly Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. In later emails included in the same document release, the Invisible Man talks about his office being restructured and his life feeling chaotic. He tells Maxwell that he feels lost and asks her for ideas on how to get his mind back on track. The tone is familiar, emotional, and unguarded. There's no sense of distance or formality. This is not the language of someone trying to cut ties. Elsewhere in the files, Maxwell refers to the Invisible Man in an email to a contact in Peru. Around the same time, the Invisible Man discusses a possible trip to Peru in February 2002. 1 month later, Andrew did, in fact, carry out a 6-day official visit to Peru as part of celebrations marking his mother's reign. These details, taken one by one, might seem small. Together, they form a pattern that is difficult to ignore. This is why so many journalists, lawyers, and researchers believe the sender was Andrew, even though his name does not appear directly in the emails. The documents were released as part of a wider disclosure by the U.S. Department of Justice, which began publishing material in December. Andrew's name appears repeatedly across the files, often linked to Epstein and Maxwell. In one section, there is mention of an interest in 2-legged sightseeing, described as intelligent, pretty, and fun. That phrasing has disturbed many readers because it appears to reduce people to objects, not individuals. Andrew has previously admitted to associating with Epstein. He has denied any criminal behavior, but what unsettles many is not just the association, but the tone of comfort that runs through these messages. They do not read like the words of someone distancing himself from a dangerous world. They read like someone still inside it. One image included in the release has also attracted intense attention. It shows Andrew reclining across the laps of several women, their faces obscured, while Maxwell stands above them looking down. The photograph has circulated widely and has become a symbol of the social environment surrounding Epstein at the time. Critics say it reflects entitlement and imbalance of power. Supporters argue it proves nothing on its own. But again, context matters. Another memo released in the same batch confirms that in April 2020, U.S. authorities formally requested help from the UK government to arrange a voluntary interview with Andrew. The request related not only to Epstein and Maxwell, but also to Canadian fashion designer Peter Nygaard, who has since been convicted and sentenced. The memo states clearly that Andrew was not considered a target of the investigation, and that U.S. authorities had not gathered evidence that he committed a crime under U.S. law. However, it also states that if he declined a voluntary interview, authorities wanted the option of a compelled interview under oath. Andrew never agreed to be interviewed. Buckingham Palace has consistently said that he cooperated fully through his legal representatives. Critics argue that cooperation usually involves answering questions directly, not only through lawyers. That difference in interpretation has continued to fuel public frustration. Andrew is not the only public figure named in these files. Donald Trump's name appears many times in the same release. One email from an assistant U.S. attorney suggests the former president traveled on Epstein's private jet more often than previously reported. Some argue this proves the story is larger than one man. Others believe it does not lessen Andrew's responsibility. What makes this email so damaging is not just the phrase, inappropriate friends. It is the ease with which it was written. There is no hesitation, no caution, no sense that the sender believed his words could ever become public. It suggests a belief that certain conversations were protected forever. For many watching this story unfold, especially those who remember the early 2000s, clearly it is a reminder of how different the rules once felt for people at the very top. Private jokes stayed private, connections were protected, silence was assumed. The palace has not commented directly on the email. Andrew has not spoken publicly about this latest release. The exact details of who knew what and when remain disputed. Some questions may never be answered, but documents like this make it increasingly difficult to argue that these relationships were brief, misunderstood, or harmless. They suggest continuity, familiarity, and comfort long after warning signs were visible. So the question now is not whether this email changes Andrew's position. That position was lost years ago. The real question is whether each new document continues to erode the silence that once surrounded him, whether they confirm what many suspected but could not prove. And the most unsettling question remains unanswered. What exactly did he mean by inappropriate friends? Do documents like this push the story forward, or do they simply confirm that a world built on privilege, secrecy, and entitlement was allowed to exist far longer than it ever should have?